Welcome to Us, Past, Present, Future, and our conversation about Juneteenth. My name is Beth Kelly, and I have the honor to serve as the Vice President of Education, Research, and Historical Interpretation at Colonial Williamsburg. Juneteenth is a time to commemorate, celebrate, educate, and reflect on the Black experience in America. The story of the Black experience is the story of America. By looking back, looking around, and looking within, we are challenged to evaluate the foundations of inequality and move forward together, committing ourselves to the unfinished work of eradicating systematic racism. Colonial Williamsburg is a museum within a very old community. The city was founded in 1699, and even older is the university, William and Mary, founded in 1693. While we are the newcomer to this community, having only been here for over 90 years, we do function as a partner to our broader community. As a museum, we exist to engage and educate audiences. We preserve and interpret the tools and skills that built a new nation, as well as present the story of diverse peoples, often with conflicting interests, who were all seeking freedom. We have sought to tell a more complete story for decades. Today, I'm sitting in front of an exhibit we launched in 2019 to commemorate that work, reflecting on over 40 years of telling the story of African Americans in our programming and interpretations. Ben, Janie, Aggie, Kit, Nancy, Lemon, Grace, Clem, Eve, and I could go on, but they were all at one time residents of Williamsburg. As a modern citizen in this community, I and my fellow citizens walk the same ground they did. We work and live in the very buildings they built. Our greater Williamsburg community chooses to honor them and by sharing their stories. We gathered earlier today where our community has gathered for over 320 years on Market Square, educating, commemorating, and celebrating Juneteenth. We do this because as a community, freedom is important to all of us, and we recognize how hard fought it has been to obtain and maintain. Over the generations, our community has not always allowed everyone the freedom they desired. Colonial Williamsburg, as a living history museum, has not always educated about the full story or been inclusive about the audiences we attracted. As a museum, we still have work to do. And as a nation, we have much work to do to acknowledge systematic racism exists and to overcome it and provide equality for all citizens. As we look back, around, and within, we can build a future where our founding ideals are fulfilled for all people. The conversations we have about topics related to our constitutional democracy are important and at times difficult, but they are actually the breath that brings action and change and moves us towards fulfilling the promises first expressed in this community over 250 years ago. Thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with our panelists about Juneteenth. Our hope is that we start the conversation with you and that you continue it in your own community. Thank you again for joining us.
Good afternoon and welcome to Us, Past, Present, Future, Juneteenth. And happy Juneteenth to everyone who's out there watching. My name is Jamar Jones and I have the pleasure and the privilege of serving as your moderator for today. And today, if you haven't guessed, we will be speaking about Juneteenth and not only the importance of the holiday, but what we hope to see as far as celebration, commemoration, and acknowledgement moving forward as a nation. Now, before I introduce you to our esteemed panelists for the day, just want to let you know, you may know a lot about Juneteenth, you may not know much at all, but there's a reason that we've come together to celebrate this monumental day in our history. And we've been celebrating all day here at Colonial Williamsburg with various events and programs. And it's such a beautiful thing when you think about it, because here we are in Virginia, but the origins of Juneteenth actually go all the way back to 1865, June 19th, in Galveston, Texas, where the remaining group of enslaved individuals found out that they had indeed received their freedom from the Emancipation Proclamation. And this news spread amongst that community. And of course, as you know, the years since, the centuries since, Juneteenth has truly taken on its own life, its own celebration. And this year we really are making new waves. But we certainly have some questions and thoughts. And I'll stop there because I'm not on the panel, but I think it's a fine time for us to meet these panelists, Richard Josey, Michael Twitty, Deirdre Jones Cardwell. And I'll allow the panelists to introduce themselves. Richard, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Peace and blessings. Richard Josey, longtime supporter. My whole career began here at Colonial Williamsburg. But, you know, at this point in time, from Colonial Williamsburg to Minnesota Historical Society and many clients across the country, I'm now running my own show in terms of a consultancy, right? And so, you know, from there, we've started to add a little bit more in terms of, you know, thinking about some of the voids that we have in the field, like mental health and historical trauma and reconciliation, and how do all these things play out well in terms of identifying the future we want to create. Because at the end of the day, you know, my organization's goal is to help every single organization overcome those sort of obstacles of being inclusive, but also helping them answer the question, what kind of ancestor we want to be? And starting to chart a course for being who we want to be. At some point in time, we're going to leave this place. We got to start asking ourselves, what are we doing now to leave behind what we want to leave? So thankful to be here with y'all.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. Michael?
My name is Michael W. Twitty. I'm a culinary historian, the James Beard Award-winning author of The Cooking Gene, and writes through UNC Press, and Kosher Soul also from HarperCollins as The Cooking Gene. I am a 10, 15, maybe longer, veteran historical interpreter. I've often done consultancy work with Colonial Williamsburg, and I focus on the culinary arts of enslaved Africans, free people of color from the colonial to the antebellum period.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm Deirdre Jones Cardwell. I'm an actor-interpreter, program lead for the actor-interpreters here at Colonial Williamsburg. You may have seen me on the streets in costume if you've been here before. I'm so pleased to be up here with my first manager, Richard Josey, who was in the room that brought me into this work. And I'm really grateful to wear a lot of different hats here at the foundation. So those titles are a little bit limiting, but I'm around serving and collaborating, creating, and consulting with people all around the foundation, and I'm happy to be up here with each of you.
Yes.
And you.
Thank you. I'm certainly excited to be in the company of you all wonderful people. And of course, for all of you watching at home, if you have any sort of burning questions, please feel free to write them in the comments section, and we might just have the opportunity to ask our panelists any questions that you put forth. So please do write those down. Now, I do want to ask you all our first question, but it's kind of a twofold thing, because there might, as I said, there might be a lot of things people do know about this holiday. It's also referred to some as Jubilee Day or Emancipation Day as well. And I know one of the interesting orders that was part of the issuing to let people know about the freedom, I just want to share. It's very fascinating. General Order Number 3 says the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. Yes, and so I see a lot of faces there, and so I just want to put that forth because I think we might be able to touch upon that. But in conjunction with that, you fast forward to this week. On Thursday, President Biden signed a bill declaring that Juneteenth will now be recognized and acknowledged as a federal holiday in America. So this is for the whole panel. Do you all think this is a victory? And if you do think it's a victory, who is this victory for?
So America has this tradition of what sociologists call civil religion. And it's not referring specifically to any sort of dogma, religious belief. It's just the idea that there is something sacred, honorable, and important, memorable, and it's mnemonic for what we should value in our history and our culture and identity and ideas. And the problem is that, as with many things, Jamar and friends, we are the ancestors are talking to us now. When something drops, your ancestors are saying something and saying, come on, get to the point, though. So the point is that, when we look at July 4th, for example, we have a new custom of reading Frederick Douglass's "What to the Slave is Your 4th of July," which is, we can paraphrase, what to African Americans is the 4th of July. And yes, we do have some hand in it, and we have defended the principles behind that holiday, but the original, it's an original intent, it really wasn't for us. And so now we have to ask the question, well, Thanksgiving was supposed to bring us together, right? Not only after the Civil War, but bring in people who were newly arrived into the American fold. But has it always? Other holidays that are in the civil calendar, Memorial Day, Labor Day, have we really ever had the true meaning of those holidays? So the question is now, is Juneteenth going to be sufficient? Is it going to be efficient? Is it going to be useful? And are we really going to do more than just tell the story of one day, but also the aftermath of that day, and what the prequel to that day, and where we are now in relationship to the legacy of that day?
And I agree with all of that, those questions, and just trying to figure out, like, when I think about what brought us here, what it took, and the intention behind different people. Why Juneteenth? Why now? Why making it this holiday? I can't speak to everyone's intention. I think some folks have been fighting for this. I heard about a woman the other day named Opal Lee who had marched and petitioned for this. There are people who have wanted more recognition for this day. But what did it come out of? When I think about people starting to get national attention, I think about last year, 2020, and all of the people that were killed, and we sat at home, and because we were quarantined, and we watched Black people get murdered. And we've known Black people have been getting murdered, and we ask for justice, and we get these different offerings. And so for me, it's bittersweet, and I just hope that like Michael said, that we can remember what it took to get here, and we can keep on pushing against falling into the complacency that comes with so many other momentous celebrations or days.
I'll just quickly say, I was reading something just really recent because I've been struggling all week long. I've been conflicted about Juneteenth, and I've been feeling different ways about it. And I think what it comes down to for me is, thinking about what Michael and Deirdre were just saying. You think about Martin Luther King Day, and what that started off to be, and how it is manifested into something else. you know, when you think of Juneteenth now, and you go out on the street and you see everybody with their Juneteenth shirts on, and everybody's, you know, doing all these sorts of things, and I'm concerned because, you know, we are doing much more arguing now amongst ourselves as people, even just amongst black people, you know, so-called black people, if I use some Malcolm X terminology, but you know, the outcome of this is that this is an opportunity for us to come together, you know, to establish a collective. We always say it takes a village to raise a child. Problem is that we haven't developed a village here yet, right? And so I'm just hopeful that, you know, after we get past this Juneteenth, that we'll start to get to a point of understanding what a collective looks like and how a collective moves and how a collective is organized and mobilized to be able to get the things done that we want done. Because I love a holiday, but I love even more the idea of thinking that I don't have to worry about another black man or a black woman being killed by the police because a cell phone was, you know, identified and thought to be a weapon or something of that nature. So, you know, and so I think that's just where I am now in thinking about how can we make Juneteenth impactful and stay true to the intent of the ancestors, because otherwise we as people have a tendency to take something and make it into something else and it not necessarily be as helpful as it was originally intended to.
I don't want another commemoration that is about symbolics and not systemics.
Exactly.
Because systemics, you know, symbolics is cute and nice. It's easy. But the hard work, getting, you know, 25, 30% more people to vote, means that we have a shield. Talking about it, or talking about things that are wrong, or that's a different story. So what's performative and what's actualized, that's what we're really getting at here. You know, Deirdre, do we just have a holiday where we perform the act of being happy about being free and mad about oppression, or do we use this? I mean, for me, I guess when I heard, for me, MLK Day when I was growing up was an extraordinary achievement when I was a little kid. Now I have this. I've lived through 2 holidays that incorporate us, but you know, just turning MLK Day into a day of what do they call it? A day of service. I want Juneteenth to turn into a day of activism.
Thank you.
I want us to register people to vote on Juneteenth. I want us to find new ways to have our communities not be over-policed on Juneteenth. I want new ways for us to find ways to center our fitness and our health and our diet and our culture in our own community on Juneteenth. I want $1 to stay in the black community on Juneteenth, and so on and so forth.
And Michael, I want to ask you, so with that, if Juneteenth does become this day of activism, how do you get people on the same, speaking the same language? Because I think we all can say the last year and a half or so, this idea and this concept of what activism is, what activism looks like, depending on who you talk to, and this could be, you know, across different races, different, you know, cultures, and even within the own black community, about what activism is supposed to look like. Now, I know you started listing things, but that's something I just want to put out to the panel. If it were to become this day of activism, what does that look like, and how do you get everybody speaking the same language to say, yes, this works for us, or can you ever?
Well, and I've been wondering, like, I agree with your question. I was thinking about what Richard has said about you know, establishing our village. I think you said it better than that, but this idea of, you know, what do we do? And it makes me think about slavery. Like, we're diasporic people from the continent of Africa. We're descendants of them, and they weren't all one people. They were one people, but they weren't all from the same groups, the same languages. And so even still, we're living in those ripples of the institution of slavery, and those challenges of these people being thrust here with this common experience of the slave ship, or of seasoning, you know, going through those different things that we know the ancestors went through. And now we, you know, whether we realize it or not, or acknowledge it or not, we are the descendants of those people, and we're having to find this language. We're having to find Do we defund the police, or do we, do we disband the police? This language we're saying, everyone's saying something, and I would love to see us get back to something I heard, Ms. Janice Kennedy say, Ms. Kat say about, we can all sing together, but we all can't talk at the same time. And how do we begin listening to one another? I wonder about Dr. King, and that there's a day, but like they say, not everyone that acts like they loved Dr. King now that he's passed away actually was supporting him when he was alive. Yeah. So we have that same stuff, those same things happening right now. So I don't have an answer to your question, but I think that acknowledging that we are different and we have different ideas is a part of it. Right. But can we listen to one another and support one another? And
absolutely. And I think that's okay. I think we might bring up a lot more questions than answers here, but the thing to know is we are at a very interesting intersection, right? This a day that has been commemorated for years. Just this week, we are living in a time where it's been solidified that it will be a federal holiday across the nation, right? So maybe 5 years ago, some people might not have ever even heard of Juneteenth. But so we're going to have a lot of questions, right? And I do want to bring up to the panel, Michael, this might be good for you to take the lead on. We have a lot of guests actually asking questions about what's right in front of us right now. They're curious about the tea, and I know it has an important significance, and I want us to continue back in our conversation, but if you could let us know about the significance.
So we're kind of liberally sipping because we're like in need of coffee, but this is going to suffice in a moment. So this is one version of hibiscus drink, rather light, I might say, but we handle that later. Hibiscus, sorrel, bissap, Jamaica, same thing. It's not the pretty hibiscus that you see at Home Depot, so don't even try it. It's the hibiscus that is indigenous to Africa. And whether you call it sobolo, bissap, or one of the other names, it's basically a punch made from the petals of a flower. It's a tisane, more than a tea. And so that's our red drink for the day. Our red drink could have been something that begins with a K and has an A in it. Or it could have been strawberry soda, which is traditional to Texas. Okay. Strawberry soda water, or red soda water as they called it. During the Zoom the other day, someone reminded us in the chat, red dye is poisonous and cancerous. And I'm like, oh my God, that wasn't the point. But the idea here is that on Juneteenth, you drink, red foods. Why the color red? There is no official answer to why that folklore is there, but my best guess is that a lot of people in Galveston and Brazoria and other parts of coastal Texas, we forget that those folks were brought to America later. Some folks were brought in. Most Afro-Texans were brought in from the lower South, and a good deal from the upper South. So the folks who were brought to pick cotton, the folks who were brought to grow sugarcane and rice, they were traveled across in the domestic slave trade. And then you have this large number of people who are being brought from Cuba and on the islands. They were the toss-offs of the last bit of the transatlantic slave trade. So in 1 year, Galveston had like 36,000 Africans arrive. All without the radar of the United States government, which of course said in 1808, no more importation. Well, Texas wasn't even part of America until 1845, 20 years before Juneteenth. Brazoria County had the largest number of black folks who reported having themselves, parents or grandparents being born in Africa. So the color red, as you know, in African spirituality tradition, there are red foods that represent certain spiritual forces. In Yoruba culture, red is the color of Ashe. In Congo culture, red is the color of transformation and sacrifice. So so this is the background. You can have red velvet cake on the table, which I wish we kind of had, with some coffee.
With coffee.
With coffee. What red foods can we have with coffee? Right. That's traditional. Barbecue's traditional. A little bit messy for the henage, though. Not allowed. Preservation. But that's kind of the basic background on why we have the red drink in front of us. And it's slightly healthier. There's a little sugar in it. I ain't gonna lie. But it's slightly healthier. And We also want people who are viewing this to understand we are having a very traditional Black kitchen table conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's for both our passion and our comfort.
Yes.
That we are in this kind of setting.
Yeah, and what a beautiful thing after a year of isolation, right?
Right,
And
right.
And you know, we as a nation, but also as a people, we've experienced a lot of isolation in a way that, you know, not only because of COVID, but, you know, we've had to, so much has happened on our screens and in our families, and we've had to deal with this separately. So it really is beautiful for us to come together. And it, you know, for me, I've never been able to commemorate Juneteenth in this way. And I want to ask the panel, you know, we were speaking about, Michael, you mentioned how the red soda is, you know, it's traditional to Texas. I'm curious, do we have any sort of responsibilities as Black Americans who, I know, Michael, you have a little bit of roots in Texas, but Rich, I don't believe you said in Deirdre, and I know I don't believe I do. Since this is something that was so integral to this one community, right? You know, these might not be our direct ancestors, but here we are celebrating something that started with a group of enslaved individuals in Texas who found out they were free. Do we have any sort of responsibilities to uphold their origins of what this was? Or, you know, what does that look like? And that's a question I put, like, is it okay for us to be creating these brand new traditions, or what do we have hopes? And so I just throw that out there.
I've already seen red, gold, and green foods. But no, it's red. It's red.
It's red.
It's red. Don't have me running around looking for no gold drink.
Right.
Mr. Josey, talk.
Richard, do you have thoughts on that?
You know, I think, you know, for me, it's kind of dicey, you know, and I think to some extent, you know, I would encourage people that, you know, as we talk about Juneteenth, that we make sure that consistently we acknowledge in Galveston, Texas.
Yes.
Right? Off top. I think there's also something to be said in terms of how, I think it's Dr. King that said that, you know, if some of us ain't free, then all of us ain't free. You know, that sort of idea. And so I think, you know, this is a very interesting sort of scenario for me, where you have, you know, something that's specific to, you know, Galveston, Texas, you know, and the you know, becoming free and liberated there, and then how that connects to the greater story that impacts everywhere. And so there's this negotiation that has to take place between, you know, how we acknowledge and recognize and respect the uniqueness of Galveston, Texas, but also the connection that has with just this overall story of liberation and freedom, right? And so I think that's a careful balance that we as humans struggle with all the time, you know, in terms of, you know, me, myself, and I versus the collective we. You know, how we negotiate and balance that. And so I think it can be done. I just think that to some extent we've got to find, like, Richard Josey can't sit here and say what it should be, because then if I were to do that, then I would be just like everybody else out here who's determining right now what it should be, you know, in their place. I think there needs to be, to some extent, I was telling y'all in the rehearsal, like, I'm thinking back to the 70s and seeing, you know, these collective, you know, Black leaders having this conversation. I'm of the mindset that there needs to be a larger sort of conversation and an acknowledgement and you know, respect to talk about what makes the most sense, what makes the best sense. And I want to make sure that people from Galveston, Texas sitting at that table.
Right.
So that's where my mind tends to go. I'd love to hear what anybody else's thoughts are on that.
Well, what you've been saying is actually something that's come up a lot for us that have been working here at the foundation, just trying to figure out what our programming should be for Juneteenth. And it's this idea of different people having different ideas of what, you know, how to commemorate it, how to, you know, is it a celebration? Is it a commemoration? And it's been, I think that there's room for all of that. I think that that's reflective in what has come together with our partners in the community. And also being aware of not only Galveston, Texas, and what happened there, the empathy that we feel. I wasn't there, I'm not from Texas, but how it's come up for me is it's been something that's been in my periphery. It's been in my knowledge. I've heard of Juneteenth. Until recently, I didn't actually start actively commemorating it, but it was something that I was aware of. And so this idea of being aware that there's ways that I might commemorate, there's ways that people in Galveston might commemorate. But then when you look at Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, which, you all, y'all been here. I work here, and Beth said it. She said it earlier. I'm gonna say we, because I'm here, right? The collective responsibility. We have not always been inclusive. We have not always told the whole story. We have not always acknowledged the 52.4% of people of African descent that were here, and the other populations that were here in Williamsburg. The American Indians. The Jewish man that was here. We haven't always told these stories, and so when it comes to how Colonial Williamsburg, which has traditionally looked from a very European lens at history, when we started talking about we're going to do something for Juneteenth, we had these conversations about we have to recognize who we are and how we appear to the community, and how we have often been white supremacist, and told that kind of story, and told history in that way, and marketed those stories in that way. How do we turn around and all of a sudden tell the community that we want to join with them and commemorate Juneteenth? And that's been a conversation that we've had. So I think you're right. I think it looks different from who you are, and I can't tell you how to commemorate it. I can't tell you how to commemorate it, but I do hope that we all know Galveston, Texas, and know that there were many Juneteenths before then, that happened between the Emancipation Proclamation and onward, and the ones that people made for themselves when they were running away, pursuing freedom. And so, tag someone else.
There's multiple narratives here. There's the narrative of those people who actually knew their freedom as contraband before the Civil War was over. There are the people who were actually freed in Washington, D.C., and in Maryland and Kentucky and Tennessee, and really didn't get to go nowhere until after the Civil War was over. And then there's a narrative of those people like my great-great-grandfather and his brother who were emancipated at Appomattox, who saw Grant and Lee walk out the door, were given their freedom on the spot, and why wouldn't they? Because they saw hundreds of black troops with guns, so that was all good. And then there are the people who in Texas who, the reason why would someone just not tell these people? It's because, Texas, you started planting in January. That was their spring because it was a warmer climate in southern and eastern Texas. So the cotton crop, which is a 6 to 8 month crop, and sugarcane, they knew that if they could just eke out one more harvest from them, they would be 3 steps ahead of the other planters in the South whose bales had been burned or had war, or they were ruined. So it was a grift. It was a grift on our bodies, souls, and it was also to continue those practices, those volatile practices against us, abusive practices. What I am concerned about right now in terms of Juneteenth having this national recognition in the midst of a reckoning about our history, people are. I don't want to put too much of my opinion in it, but honestly, people are dying for idols. The idols of the lost cause, and they're trying to make false equivalencies between this recognition of this holiday and that. I'm like, no, I'm so sorry. That's not how this works. If you really do believe in the 4th of July, then in the spirit of American unity, then you cannot believe in that and at the same time believe in worshiping a statue of a man, Robert E. Lee, who said, I don't want statues, I don't want any more division, let's get back to the work of healing this country. There's a tacit hypocrisy in all of this. And the anger at calling Juneteenth National Independence Day, everybody around this table knows. Okay, so you're saying that's not for everybody. But was the 4th of July for everybody when it was said? And all of us at this table who are trenched in this institution know that the language that the first patriots used to describe their condition was, why are you enslaving us?
Yeah.
Why are you
The
treating
hypocrisy,
us?
right?
Why are you treating us like those people that we mistreat?
Yeah.
Go on now.
Ashe.
Come on, bring it.
Well, I'm intrigued to see how the panelists might respond to this question. This question comes from Elise. Elise asks, how do you think white folks should celebrate this holiday? Should we celebrate? Should we watch and support? In the vein of what this holiday will become, what would you like allies to do on this day of activism?
I'll make it quick. Call Mitch McConnell and tell him to put that Voting Rights Act into place. That's what.
Well, you know, there's a whole lot that's in the subcontext of what you said.
You unpack the subtext.
And let me unpack that a little bit, because here's the thing.
Unpack.
For those of y'all who are on Facebook, y'all see a little meme rolling around where it has, you know, Juneteenth at the top of the stairs and something else at the bottom of the stairs, and how the character in the image is taking steps over voting rights, over, you know,
education
and so on and so forth. And this is a quick win, and I get it. I understand the quick wins. What I'm saying is that the quick wins, time and time again, aren't resolving the core issue.
Yes.
Symbolic.
And I think we at a point right now where what we really want to do is let's just rip the Band-Aid off so we can really heal. And embody a philosophy that says do no more harm. Because that's what has to happen right now. We can do this collectively. We can, but it means we got to sacrifice some egos, you know what I'm saying, some narcissism and all of those sorts of things so that we can have a real conversation. But to kind of round this off a bit, we got voting rights. We got police community, relationships. We've got education. I mean, we are knee deep in a conversation now in states across the country about critical race theory, which that theory is part of how you teach Juneteenth. so we can celebrate Juneteenth, but we can't explain why we celebrate it. Like, a lot of the stuff isn't making sense, and folks aren't necessarily really having clear communication. Like, put all the cards on the table. Tell me if you don't like black people. Say you don't like black people, and then we can move forward and move forward in that sort of way. But the reality right now is that we are killing ourselves collectively as a nation, because for more reasons that this program will be able to allow us to unpack. But these are some things that's sort of some context, some subcontext behind what my brother's saying.
Well, what you said the other day ago about how this is not a question of white pockets and black pockets.
Right.
It's a question of who is rooted, who understands, who's educated, who's informed, and who is not. Who has the tools to do the activism, who doesn't. Who wants to, who's apathetic, and who is not.
Yeah.
Who downright doesn't want to do it at all, who doesn't. That's where we're at. We're not pointing fingers at anybody in particular.
Right.
We're saying collectively responsible for this stuff.
Yeah, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, and so no matter what you look like, I cannot tell anyone in particular what to do. I could, but that's like telling somebody to apologize. That's not coming from the heart. That general orders that was read earlier, it said that they would be equal. It said that these enslaved people would be equal. But you cannot change people's hearts who have been taught their children and taught by their grandmothers and great-grandmothers that these people are not equal. So there's what is enacted, or there's what is imposed by law, but there's also the changes that have to happen in people's hearts. And the only way that these changes start happening in hearts and then follow through with some action, you have to start looking around. You have to start paying attention. You have to see the voter suppression that's happening in your community. You have to see the way that black people are policed. You have to see, the other things happening with people around you. And start looking at home. We sometimes think we have to go abroad to affect change. There are things that are happening right here in the United States. In the United States, we say we're united. I don't want to get off topic, but how united are we? And when in history have we come together as a nation? Because I didn't see it last year. I didn't see it last year. And sometimes I think about history and look at history and I'm like, were we only united? When it came to agreeing that Black people were 3/5 of humans? Mm-hmm. Were we only united in trying to us versus them? And really looking at all of this and trying to figure out what is really happening and how can you start doing little things? How can you inform yourself so that you know what to say in your friend groups? So how do you start shutting it down, in the areas when people are speaking hatred about any group of people? How do we start shutting things down by being informed, by realizing that sometimes people say distasteful things and they think it's rooted in I don't know what they think it's rooted in, but really what it's rooted in is hatred. And a lot of it's derivative. That language in the order also about idleness.
Yes,
as if. Oh my goodness. And I think about today being here and how many times when I'm in costume or not in costume and my fellow employees or guests come to me and want to make a comment in jest about being idle. Mm-hmm.
And let's that's a great well, that's not a great segue, but that
change
is
the topic.
No,
change it completely. Let's go somewhere else.
But it is a segue about a commonality that we all have. Now, I'm certainly sure everyone listening, they heard what you all do, and we all have ties working here at the Colonial Williamsburg Institution, at other various institutions, but a commonality that we all share is the exploration and speaking about this work, 18th century work, right? The lives of enslaved individuals. And we've all been doing it various amounts of time, various expertises. And a little bit of what you're saying, just like some things that you're approached with, Deirdre, while you are in character in first-person interpretations. I want to bring up a word that Michael shared with us. It's a Yoruba word. Iprowada. It means to masquerade. And I'm curious just to pose this question to the panel. When you think about your work as interpreters, what mask do we wear, and when do those masks enhance or conceal energies or powers for us? And what representations do we bring from our ancestors to the living within that work? So do you see this putting on these clothes, which we use as costumes? Do you see that as a mask? And just, I would love to just move a little bit about what our work says about where we are.
This space is important to telling the story that leads up to Juneteenth. It has to begin. There's an origin story here. Mm-hmm. It begins somewhere. Mm-hmm. And to piggyback on something that was said earlier, the people of Texas are our people because the domestic slave trade was the largest forced migration in American history. And a lot of people who came from the Upper South were born right here. Mm-hmm. It took 2 generations and they were obliterated. And they were moved to Texas and other places beyond. And some of those folks ended up in Tulsa. And other folks ended up in Chicago and Oakland. Mm-hmm. So it's a continuous chain, But in terms of these clothes, I remember going to Sierra Leone, and there is a particular mask that's associated with the Poirot, the male secret society, and it's in leopard cloth, and it covers the entire body. You can't see the face. A lot of people think of masks as performative in the West. They are not. They are not there to put on a show, to make you clap. They're there to have an engagement between the living and those who are in spirit form, between those who are in human form and those who are spirit and animal form. And so this particular mask, when you greet it, you can't let it touch you. But when you greet it, you bow, and it bows. And the point is that when it bows, you have to look at the very top, which is leopard skin, different colors, and then mirror. So that when you look into the face of the ancestors, you see yourself. Oof. You're confronted with the fact that they are you and you are them. So all of us, when we've done our various interpretations, some of us acting, some of us reenactments, what we're doing is we are people. People don't see us. You know that feeling like when you see other interpreters in regular clothes, and you're like, who are you? Versus, right? It's like, who is that person?
Sure enough.
And then there's the clothes, and then some of our own folks have these weird reactions. Some of them are very positive, like, wow, you're bringing something to my attention, to my consciousness that I didn't think about. And then others get very vulnerable and very scared. Yeah. It's fear. It's fear that says, oh, are you Aunt Jemima? Yeah. It's fear that says, are you going to start shucking and jiving next? Mm-hmm. It's fear that says, why you got dressed in them clothes? Why do you have to take us back?
Right.
Mm-hmm. As if the white folks were in the same civilian clothes. I've never seen somebody go up to them and say, oh, why you gotta look like the Quaker Oats man? Like, that's scary. I don't like fiber. Like, there's, you know what I'm saying? So I really want to hear from y'all, how do you feel about this garb and the mask it provides you and the power that you bring out when you have donned historical costume?
Oof. So it's funny that you mentioned people not recognizing you, because I'm always taken aback when I'm somewhere and someone does recognize me when I'm out of costume. I'm like, oh, you actually see me, which is really, really, really interesting. But like, I think about the process of putting on my clothes. It's like shift, stockings, shoes, stays, on a good day, and a jacket, a petticoat, apron, pocket, not in that order. Yeah, but it's a process, right? And for me, a lot of times, all of that feels in some way like armor. For me, it is, as a theater kid, as an actor, this is part of the process of getting into characters, putting on the clothes, and it is in a way ritualistic. But then at the same time, what turns the clothes into clothes of an enslaved person or clothes of a free person, but this beautiful skin that I wear?
Come on.
And so when I take off the clothes, and I've gone through my work day, I've gone through the shows or the programs or the interpretations with guests, and I take off, I go through the ritual of taking off and removing. What I don't take off, what I don't want to take off, and I can't take off, is this skin that changes what the clothes are, change what the clothes represent. The clothes for me are not, they're very heavy. People are like, are you hot in those clothes? I'm like, what you should ask is, are the clothes heavy? But it's my skin that makes the clothes heavier. And I love the weight of it, because it, we are the ancestors, and I intersect with them as a woman, as a Black woman, and in moments where we meet, it's horrifying, because I want to, in some ways, I want to keep them at a distance. I don't want to connect to the fear. I don't want to ever, as Kate, I would talk about safety and feeling safe a great deal, as it relates to the Declaration of Rights of Virginia. And these past couple of years, hearing about people getting shot in their houses while they're going through neighborhoods, suddenly I don't feel safe as I was feeling in my skin. And then they were like, oh, we're opening back up, come back to work, put back on the clothes, put back on your mask. But I'm like, there is no mask. We are blended. We are one. And so for me, I don't know if I answered your question, but
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's
Heavy.
Yeah. I think he's spot on. I mean, and when we talk about masks, I start peeling away all of the different masks that I wear and try to figure out which one are we talking about.
So many. Oof. Yeah.
Because it's it's funny, because when we were talking before, I was thinking about like the masks that I got to wear because of COVID. And I'm thinking like, okay, that's just one of the several masks that I have to wear, because there's this blackness that happens, and it's not just about how non-Black people or even other Black people treat us, but it's also how we treat ourselves. Because I can't tell you how many times I feel like I've gone crazy. We were doing a program out of Carter's Grove, and I was portraying Kofi, who was an enslaved man who had just gotten the lashes across his back. And as you come around the corner, you could hear the lashes go off. And I'm in there, you know, with this makeup on you know, on my back, and I'm crying. And I remember this one night, Valerie Gray Holmes, she was my mother, you know, and she was, you know, putting this stuff on. And I remember like the mixture of what we had. It was hot too, and my face was, you know, and I was looking through like just the fog, and I was lost for a moment. I was lost in another place, time. Like I was literally lost in that space. And I never forget that moment. I never forget the moment of running away and getting hit with the musket and having to go to the store, you know, or going to the store on the way home in costume.
Oh, that's a thing.
Right? and people that I know or people that I don't know, they look at you like,
What is going on?
and it's not just them, you know, it's them looking, but it's also my fear of what they are thinking.
Yes.
Right? And so we have these multiple battles that we have to fight while we wear the costume and step out in the street and try to seek safety amongst potentially unsafe peoples.
Right.
There it is. And you don't know who.
Right. And when I say unsafe, I'm not saying that everybody who's coming to a site or anything of that nature are coming in and malicious and trying to do this. But sometimes people just don't know better. Yeah. Sometimes people don't know that you just don't go to black people and call them the N-word and think that that's cool.
Right.
That's a problem, you know? And so I think that, you know, when I think about the costume, I think the costume, for me, over the course of time, has been a cover for some of the work that I, Richard Josey, needed to do so that white perspective didn't define how I thought about myself. Or black folks who, you know, think, you know, why are you taking us back? That doesn't define who I am, right? And because to some extent, we all dealing with varying layers of intergenerational, historic, and racial trauma.
Yeah.
And we all trying to figure out how to make our way out of it and
attempt to heal.
And at the same time frame, try not to do harm to our other brothers and sisters who are in that struggle.
It's like sometimes when you there are times when this is just a thing. And there are other times when I literally have the feeling that the answers are looking through your face at you. And a couple of times it's been like, and sometimes it's been like, you know, I don't know how to describe it. You know how in some movies or films or TV shows, the person, the identity of the person is there, but when they see them in the mirror, there's that other thing that's hiding, and it's looking, they're going, wow, I haven't seen myself. This is my descendant.
Right.
Whoa. And the weirdest was when I came from Africa the first time. I came from Senegal right to Colonial Williamsburg. Airport, Senegal, down the road from Dulles to Williamsburg, Virginia, and by that night, these clothes were on me. And I almost had a breakdown. And it wasn't because this was problematic. Right. It was because something was happening to me going, like it was half comical, half tragic. It was like, for real? You about to do this? You were wearing the boo-boo,
I've had that moment,
right?
yeah.
The boo-boo and the lappa and the whole thing, and then this is what you gonna wear now?
They talking.
It felt weird.
Yeah. Wow. I thank you all for sharing that. Please.
Just add something
go
else,
ahead.
because before that, you know, somebody asked a question about how to be an ally, how to do this, and so I think, you know, what I would just say specifically to that is, you know, understand the struggle that we are all in. When Juneteenth happens, when any holiday happens, anything, you know, first off, understand the struggle. We appreciate the levels of empathy that our allies give, and we hope that at some way we can convert many of our allies into accomplices. Whereas, you know, those who do have levels of privilege, they can use that privilege to help us move some things forward. Because I think in many ways, many of us want the same thing. We want a multicultural society where everybody is you know, able to breathe. Everybody's able to live. Everybody is able to take care of their children. Everybody is able to not only do all of those things, but also be accountable and responsible to themselves and the collective we. Yes. We want that. What we're saying is, stop taking my shoes from me and telling me to walk over these hot coals to get to where make that happen. Right. Like, let me wear my shoes. Stop hamstringing me. Stop tying my hands behind my back. Like stop putting up the obstacles for us to be able to do the things that we do. Stop changing the rules. Stop changing the rules for some folks and not others. Yeah. But as an ally, understand these things and use whatever resources you have so you can help us build this collective we.
Yeah. And Deirdre, were you about to?
I was just thinking about how that's been happening since 1860, 65, 66, before these people could even, process their freedom. There were already processes and systems in place to police them, to regulate them, to say what kind of jobs that they could have, to say what kind of jobs they couldn't have. These people are just some of them are just trying to find their loved ones. Because I say diaspora like it's a one-time event, but I feel like for so many of us, we are constantly, even here at Colonial Williamsburg, we done been through some diasporas here, with groups being dispersed. I say that was before my time, but, and it's really interesting just to get more informed and to start to see it for yourself, right. So that we who are going through it don't feel like we're constantly being gaslit.
In Jewish tradition, galut is the word for diaspora, and galut is a state. We are in God. We are in. It literally means exile. I'm going. Galut is a state of the people, and Yiddish galus. Galus is existence, and it's even bigger than just being displaced or exiled. It's when your spirit don't know if it's at home in your body. It can lead to dangerous things. Just want to make that point.
Yeah. We are slowly running out of time, but I want to pose one last thing, and it's kind of a blend with the question that Sarah asked. And Sarah says, Juneteenth is supposed to be a celebration of freedom, and we know Juneteenth, we equate it to this idea of freedom. Sarah's curious about what freedom means to you all, but I also want to take it another step forward. Not only what does freedom mean to you all individually, but have we really reached Juneteenth yet? That idea of freedom as a collective as well, if you think. And I would love to hear from the entire panel and just some of your final thoughts about that. And anyone who's compelled to begin.
So in the 18th century, there was a law, an act for the casual killing of slaves. If a white person were to kill one of their enslaved people while disciplining them, they could be compensated for their loss. So, bringing it forward, what is freedom? Have we reached Juneteenth? When I think about people being murdered, those that we know and those that we don't know, I don't know that we have. I don't know that my life here and now, even trying to evoke some sort of empathy for the ancestors that I portray, I don't always feel like I have that anyone sees my value as a person. That's not me asking for a lot of messages saying, "Oh, I value you." No, I'm not asking for that. What I'm asking is, do we collectively see each other's humanity? Something that has been entrenched in how we view one another and what we think about one another. How do we take deliberate action and realize that what has happened up to this point was deliberate? The dehumanizing effects of the institution of American slavery, those were deliberate actions that were taken. So when it comes to freedom, we and our ancestors have been taking deliberate steps, or need to take deliberate steps, to continue to reverse those institutions that have been put in place. And for me, the thought that for me, freedom is being able to be human and make choices and not have to deal with any extra consequences because of anything about my person. When it comes to any area of of life, or trying to love, or trying to live, or trying to get out of debt. You know, I mean, there's so many derivatives. So I'm gonna let somebody else speak.
Yeah. Did you find any final thoughts, Richard, Michael, on that?
Freedom is, for me, the ability to make mistakes and not have that pay an ultimate cost. Freedom is the ability to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is it in this space as a black, queer, Jewish, Southern man? Oh my God, what a busy intersection.
A beautiful one too.
Thank you very much. But I often think of this, and I'm not using this in a comical way. I think of this as another form of drag that helps me, represent all the energies I need to represent. Because for a lot of us, from the time we're very young, our ego and our ancestors say, "Hey, come here. You're not going anywhere. Hey, come here." And it can be very lonely. It can be very lonely. How do you talk to people who are around you about the fact that you have this connection to this thing that doesn't have any representation around you, that doesn't exist? Why are you drawn to these things from the past, the food, the craftsmanship, the bottle trees, the resistance movements? Why are you in this healing work, right? And for me, freedom has meant, it's taking my own freedom and saying, I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna represent what I need to. I have a mission I need to accomplish, and you may not like the way that mission looks. It may look messy, whatever, but here I am. I'm present for it.
Yeah,
that's freedom for me.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, and I to kind of build on what y'all saying, every time I think of freedom, I think of just, me as an individual and all the other individuals I know, that we all, are across the spectrum in terms of our identities, and that my ability to lead myself or my family into areas of success. For me, freedom is that I can do that and not be limited because of any identity that somebody else doesn't agree with.
Right.
That is saying that you're not going to turn me down for this loan because I'm black, or you're not going to not bake my cake because I'm cis, I'm heterosexual. And that certainly isn't happening. But it is this sort of reality that I can shake and move and do all the things that I aspire to do, and not have to worry about limits and obstacles and challenges because you don't want to deal with whatever my identity is. I also think that there's something very interesting about this idea of freedom, in that freedom isn't just solely defined by how other people treat me.
Right.
That freedom is also defined by how I treat myself. And for me, coming off of a whole lot of mental health deep dive in this last year, and trying to reconfigure and figure out who I am in this time, in this place, that one of the things that I realized is that sometimes, at least for Richard Josey, and maybe for some of y'all watching, sometimes the barrier towards getting success ain't white folks. It ain't, non-black folks. That sometimes some of the barriers have been the limitations that I put on myself.
Right.
Because I, at some point in time, chose to believe what non-black people told me about what you're capable of. Right. And so to some degree, I have a responsibility in acknowledging my own humanity and my own freedom before I can understand how I can, how that collective freedom or how that legal freedom can really manifest. That I have to deal with this so that I can embrace all of this. And I heard that from the ancestors last week. So I'm thankful to share that with you.
So Juneteenth happens over and over and over again in your own mind, your own soul, your own body, your own family, your own lineage, your own community, the whole world.
And in some ways, I think Juneteenth, or this freedom, is more of a journey rather than a destination.
Juneteenth is a verb.
Yeah.
Oh.
And on that note, and with that, Juneteenth is a verb. Now, you all, thank you so much for sharing this space. I don't have a word to say the joy that I have to be here with you all and literally sit at the table with you. So thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing your Juneteenth. Thank you all for joining us on this day of Juneteenth. And our hope is that this conversation does not stop right here, and we also hope that the action might actually begin here as well. So please take forth this conversation into your own community, explore more, do more, and we certainly hope for the years to come now that this celebration of Juneteenth doesn't just become just, you know, a name and a title, that it means so much more. We really get some work done and get it started. And with that, we're so glad always for you to join us for Us, Past, Present, Future. Again, my name is Jamar Jones, and we will be excited to welcome you all next month here for Us, Past, Present, Future, Building the Nation. Now, we also would like to take the time to thank Mark and Iris Koblitz, our donors without whom our Us panels would not be possible. And with that, happy Juneteenth to all of you, and have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.